There have been numerous fascinating and intriguing discoveries about this extraordinary land. Situated in the eastern region of Africa, nestled between the equator and the Tropic of Cancer, within an area known as the Horn of Africa, Ethiopia's origins are, in many ways, the origins of humanity itself. Nelson Mandela once remarked that Ethiopia holds a unique place in his imagination, and the idea of visiting Ethiopia appealed to him far more than journeys to France, England, or America combined. He felt as though he would be returning to his own beginnings, uncovering the roots that shaped his African identity. This vividly illustrates just how ancient Ethiopia is, a fact that has earned it the nickname the Mystery Giant. Ethiopia was home to Africa's oldest kingdom, one of the earliest monarchies worldwide. It is the only African nation to possess a written script that dates back over 2,000 years. It is also the sole country on the continent to have maintained its independence despite European colonial pressures. But at the heart of this video lies something even more compelling. Within Ethiopia's borders exists a little-known and contentious tale that has intrigued historians and scholars for centuries. This is the saga of the Ethiopian Bible, a sacred scripture that has been banned and suppressed by various rulers and religious leaders throughout history, yet remains actively used in the Ethiopian Orthodox Church to this day. Ethiopia was home to some of Africa's earliest civilizations, including the Kingdom of Dumt and the Kingdom of Aksum. One of the most significant eras in Ethiopia's past was the emergence of the Kingdom of Aksum around the 1st century EAD. Aksum was a dominant and influential kingdom that governed much of the Horn of Africa and engaged in trade with distant civilizations such as Rome and India. The kingdom was renowned for its sophisticated architecture, including the iconic obelisks of Aksum, and for adopting Christianity as its official religion in the 4th century AD. In the 7th century, Islamic invasions challenged Ethiopia, contributing to the decline of the Kingdom of Aksum. Nevertheless, the Christian Kingdom of Aksum was succeeded by the Zagwe dynasty, which ruled from the 12th to the 13th centuries. The Zagwe dynasty is celebrated for its remarkable rock-hewn churches in Lalibela, regarded as some of Africa's most impressive architectural feats. In the 13th century, the Solomonic dynasty rose to power, claiming descent from the biblical King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. This dynasty, also called the Solomonist dynasty, became Ethiopia's ruling imperial house, tracing its lineage back to the legendary King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, who is believed to have originated from the region now known as Ethiopia. These are among the stories found in the Ethiopian Bible stories that some would rather suppress or outlaw than allow the full truth of history to be known. According to the Western Bible, the Queen of Sheba journeyed from Ethiopia to meet King Solomon because of his famed wisdom. She sought his counsel and brought many gifts. As recorded in 1 Kings chapter 10, the Queen of Sheba was a seeker of truth and wisdom, having heard of Solomon's great intellect. She traveled by camel to Jerusalem to test the king with difficult questions and riddles. Solomon answered all her queries correctly, and the queen presented him with vast amounts of gold, spices, and precious stones. It is explicitly noted that never before had so many spices been brought as those given by the Queen of Sheba to King Solomon. This is the account given by the Western Bible. However, what it does not reveal, and what the Ethiopian Bible, the Keber Nagast, discloses, is that during her visit to Jerusalem, the Queen and Solomon had a son named Menelik. The text further explains that Menelik did not remain with his father. The queen took him back to Ethiopia, where he became the first emperor, Menelik I. In 2012, genetic research on many Ethiopians provided some evidence supporting the queen's journey to Jerusalem and the birth of Menelik there. The Solomonic dynasty governed Ethiopia for over 700 years, founding the Ethiopian Empire and expanding its lands through both conquest and diplomacy. The empire reached its zenith under Emperor Menelik II, who famously defeated the Italians at the Battle of Adwa in 1896, making Ethiopia the only African nation to successfully resist European colonization. Now let us delve deeper into the history of their revered sacred text, the Ethiopian or Gaze Bible, which is surrounded by much controversy. This is Ethiopia's oldest book, no longer illustrated, only written, worn but original. Is this the original? Yes, Mary, it is. Ethiopia possesses some of the oldest scrolls related to Israel. Unlike the King James Bible, which contains 66 books, the Ethiopic Bible includes 88 books, incorporating writings that other churches rejected or lost. Certain Ethiopian tribes have worshipped the God of Israel for over 3,500 years. However, this does not imply that all Ethiopians worship the God of Israel. Many Ethiopian Hamitic populations are divided among Orthodox Christianity, Islam, Protestantism, and other faiths. Christianity was introduced to Ethiopia in the 4th century, and the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, known as Tewahedo, is one of the world's oldest organized Christian institutions. One thing is certain: Ethiopia stands as one of the world's oldest civilizations, first settled by the descendants of Ham after Noah's flood. They possessed all the scrolls of the Old and New Testaments, plus additional scrolls never included in Gentile Christian Bibles. Remarkably, Ethiopians had these scrolls long before Christianity officially arrived in their land in the 4th century. Christianity in Ethiopia was not introduced as a new religion like in many other nations. Rather, it has been deeply rooted there since the 4th century AD. Some Ethiopian tribes have worshipped the God of Israel for thousands of years, and many believe that true descendants of the lost tribes of Israel still reside in Ethiopia and parts of Africa. Even among Jews in Israel today, the Ethiopian claim to Israelite heritage is recognized and supported by stronger genetic and historical evidence than that of many European Jews. Ethiopia's enduring Christian faith is anchored in the Ethiopian Bible, also called the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church Canon, which is a collection of sacred texts used by the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. This canon includes the Old Testament books along with several additional writings known as deuterocanonical or apocryphal books, not found in the Western Christian Bible, but considered canonical by the Ethiopian Church. The Bible is written in Ge'ez, an ancient Semitic language, and has been preserved and passed down through generations. Before modern education was introduced in the late 19th century, the Ethiopian Church was the primary institution responsible for literacy, social values, and identity formation, playing a vital role in transmitting social norms and cultural knowledge. Christianity's earliest presence in Ethiopia dates to the 4th century when King Ezana of Aksum converted to the faith, making Christianity the state religion. Early church fathers translated the Bible into Ge'ez, enabling Ethiopians to access the scriptures in their own language. This translation was completed in the 8th century by the monk Abba Pantaleon. The Ethiopian Bible was traditionally divided into two parts, the larger Keber Nagast, containing the Old Testament, and the smaller Feather Nagast, comprising the New Testament. Over centuries, the Bible underwent revisions, including a significant one in 1630 by the scholar Abba Bari, commissioned by Emperor Johannes the Ruyun, which modernized the language and understanding of the text. This Bible has been central to Ethiopian spiritual and cultural life, providing guidance and strength for generations. However, it was banned primarily during the 19th and 20th centuries by European colonizers and missionaries due to doctrinal conflicts. European scholars and missionaries questioned the authenticity and theological content of the Ethiopian Bible because it includes books excluded from Protestant and Catholic canons, often labeling these as apocryphal or non-canonical. Colonial powers such as Italy during its occupation of Ethiopia, sought to suppress the Ethiopian Bible and impose their own versions of Christianity aligned with Western doctrines. Thus, the banning of the Ethiopian Bible was largely driven by its unique canon and theological differences that challenged European Christian orthodoxy during the colonial era. European colonizers and missionaries perceived the Ethiopian Orthodox Church and its sacred scriptures as major obstacles to their ambitions of controlling and converting the Ethiopian people. They dismissed the Ethiopian Bible as inferior compared to the Western Christian Bibles, despite the fact that this Bible represents a deeper cultural and historical heritage for Ethiopians and Africans in general, rather than Westerners. The authority to define what is biblically valid does not rest with Western institutions, yet they criticize the Ethiopian Bible's content, language, and interpretations, marginalizing it in biblical scholarship and religious studies in Europe. Another key reason for the banning of the Ethiopian Bible was the colonial desire to dominate Ethiopian territory and suppress indigenous culture. European powers, notably the Portuguese, viewed the Ethiopian Bible as a symbol of resistance against their authority and sought to replace it with Western religious practices to assert control. Missionary efforts aimed to undermine Ethiopia's traditional teachings by establishing European-controlled churches and schools that promoted Western values over those of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. Consequently, banning the Ethiopian Bible became a method to assert dominance over the Ethiopian Orthodox Church and its followers. Missionaries from Roman Catholic and Protestant backgrounds regarded the Ethiopian Bible with suspicion, condemning its inclusion of apocryphal texts as heretical, and sought to impose their own biblical versions on Ethiopian Christians. Political power struggles also played a role. European powers supported rival factions within the Ethiopian Church to create divisions, weaken the Church's authority, and gain influence over key government positions and the monarchy. Through these tactics, European colonial interests succeeded in undermining the autonomy and influence of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. The banning of the Ethiopian Bible was thus driven by European missionaries and colonial powers' efforts to impose their religious beliefs and political control, leading to the marginalization and suppression of this ancient and culturally vital text. This suppression sparked ongoing controversy and debate among scholars and theologians. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, European missionaries actively lobbied to ban the Ethiopian Bible, branding it heretical and attempting to replace it with Western Bible translations aligned with their doctrines. European missionaries and colonial powers exerted significant pressure on Ethiopian rulers and church authorities to adopt Western versions of the Bible and to suppress the Ethiopian Bible. This campaign culminated in the Ethiopian Bible being banned by the Catholic Church in the early 20th century. The ban aimed to weaken the Ethiopian Orthodox Church's authority and promote the European missionaries' own interpretation of Christianity. The specific texts targeted for exclusion are known as the apocryphal or deuterocanonical books. These include the Book of Enoch, Jubilees, Tobit, Judith, Baruch, Sirach, Ecclesiasticus, Wisdom, Wisdom of Solomon, and the first and second books of Maccabees, among others. For example, the Book of Enoch, attributed to the biblical figure Enoch, contains unique narratives about the origins of demons, and Nephilim, the fall of certain angels, a moral justification for the Genesis flood, and prophetic visions of the Messiah's thousand-year reign. Jubilees retells biblical history from creation to the giving of the law at Sinai, emphasizing strict observance of the Sabbath and other religious laws. Tobit narrates the trials and eventual reward of a righteous man blinded by misfortune. Judith tells of a courageous Jewish widow who saves her people by seducing and beheading the Assyrian general Holofernes. Baruch offers prayers and reflections associated with the exile of the Jewish people. Sirach provides wisdom sayings for righteous living, and the Book of Wisdom philosophically explores the nature of wisdom and virtue. The Maccabees recount the Jewish revolt against the Seleucid Empire and the rededication of the Jerusalem Temple, events commemorated during Hanukkah. These books were excluded by many Western Christian denominations because they were not part of the Hebrew Bible and were deemed non-canonical. However, the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church regards them as sacred and authoritative. In summary, the banning of the Ethiopian Bible is a complex issue intertwined with religion, politics, and cultural heritage. It reflects a long history of colonialism, imperialism, and religious intolerance aimed at suppressing marginalized communities, beliefs, and traditions. The Ethiopian Bible, blending Christian and Jewish traditions, embodies a rich cultural legacy preserved through generations. Its suppression not only silences Ethiopian Christians, but also erases a crucial part of their identity and history. This situation calls for a reassessment of how power and privilege influence historical narratives and intercultural relations. It urges solidarity with those whose voices have been marginalized and advocates for a more inclusive world where all traditions and beliefs are honored. That concludes this segment. Please share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Support our work by liking, sharing with friends and family to spread this enlightening Black narrative, and subscribing to stay connected for more content. We appreciate your viewership. Thank you for watching.